Hi everyone, my name is Justin. This is my EDL 854 case study called the Budget Debacle. To start off, I'm going to summarize the case. So, what has happened or what is happening? Mr. Barely, a new parent of Elementary School, took on the responsibility of being president of the Briardale Foundation. Each year, the foundation raises money for the school's supplementary curriculum programs such as art, music, and foreign languages. Mr. Barely made it his personal goal to raise the most money out of any other foundation so that innovative curriculum programs could be offered in addition to the already existing programs at Briardale Elementary School. Mr. Barely represented or presented his idea of selling raffle tickets to raise $100,000 to the foundation members, and they all supported this idea. After all the tickets were sold, a raffle was held at Briardale Elementary School. Because of this raffle for cash event, Mr. Barely was convicted of a misdemeanor and placed on probation after someone from the community tipped off the local sheriff. This budget debacle ended up on the front page of the local newspaper and damaged the integrity of the Briardale Foundation and the Briardale Elementary School. So, when and where did these events occur? It wasn't said the time period of the school, but I'm assuming it was at the beginning of the school year since they had just elected a new president of the foundation, and it did take place at the Briardale Elementary School. Who is or might be involved in or concerned about the situation, and what do they have to say about it? The three main entities would be the principal, Carl Santos, and he is embarrassed about the debacle. The foundation president, Mr. Barely, and he is shocked and embarrassed about the debacle. And then I also just included, because this has already been posted on the front page of the newspaper, truly the whole Briardale Elementary School and their stakeholders, they are concerned. And I'm assuming most are shocked, but I can imagine other feelings include being disappointed in the leadership, concerned about policy and law not being followed in the school district, and then just scared for how this might impact the students at the elementary school. Next, we're going to talk about the legal and ethical issues involved in this case study. So, has anyone been harmed by the action or decision of another? I said the Briardale Elementary community and the stakeholders have been impacted by the leadership of Mr. Santos and the decision of Mr. Barely. Does the action contravene an existing law? So, according to Kansas law, a charitable raffle license is required when the gross receipts are more than $25,000. The raffle for cash event organized by the raffle for cash event organized by the Briardale Foundation, it is law breaking. If the foundation had raised less than $25,000, they would not have needed to apply for a license. But since they raised $100,000, they would need to get a license and pay the fee for the license. That license would be good for the entire year. Was there a breach of contract? Based on what I understand of the situation so far, there was not a breach of contract. However, there is some questions that I kind of still would like to have answered, such as what was the involvement or how much knowledge did Mr. Santos have of the situation? Because as building principal, there should have been better supervision of the Briardale Foundation. So, in short, what has happened? An education foundation hosted a raffle for cash event without applying for a charitable raffle license. Now let's look deeper at the people, places, and programs. So the people, Mr. Santos, it is unknown the number of years he's been a building principal, but we do know that he does provide an orientation with the new president of the foundation every year. Mr. Barely, it is his first year as the president of the foundation. He is a Harvard graduate. We know he is competitive and he wants to raise more money than Mr. Morley. Mr. Morley, he is the president of another foundation for another elementary school in the district. He's a Harvard graduate, and he beat Mr. Barely for class president at Harvard. The place, Briarden Elementary School, we know it's the hub for a diverse community. It's the town's community meeting center. The student population is about 600. It serves K-5 students. It is one of 6 elementary schools. The funding for basic skills curriculum, it does come from the district, and funding for supplemental curriculums come from fundraising activities like the Briardale Foundation fundraising event. Let's look at the program. So, the Briardale Foundation, it is led by parent volunteers. Funds raised are given to the site principals, and that is then applied to the budget for supplementary programs that are recommended by the foundation. And then the foundation works with the principal and site curriculum committee. The Briardale School Curriculum Site Committee, it is led by a lead teacher from the school, and it provides input on the recommendations from the foundation. So now let's review and prioritize the information. So, could this situation be damaging to stakeholders or to the community? Absolutely. The school community and stakeholders are directly impacted by this decision to have a raffle for cash fundraisers. What individuals and groups have an important stake in the outcome? Honestly, all stakeholders, students, staff, families, and the community. Have all the relevant stakeholders been consulted? The superintendent and board of education needs to be consulted with and brought up to speed on the situation if they are already not. And then here are some questions that I just would still like to know. So, are there policies or procedures already about foundations raising money for the school? Did the Board of Education give approval of the raffle fundraiser? Did Mr. Barely ask Mr. Santos for approval of the raffle fundraiser? Does Mr. Santos know of the law regarding raffle fundraisers? What happens to the money now raised for the supplemental programs? Was there more to the story between Mr. Barely and Mr. Morley? Do I know enough to make a decision? Yes, I believe I have enough information to proceed with a plan of action. So let's talk about the options to consider here. So, first is to take no action, which would mean Mr. Barely would remain foundation president. The money would be used for the supplemental programs. No action would be taken to rectify current policies or procedures. And Mr. Santos would try to just sweep this situation under the rug and chalk it up as we got caught. Option two would be the more comprehensive action plan. And on um, this action plan would involve collaborating with the communications department to issue an apology to the Briardale community, auditing the current established protocol for the Briardale Foundation, establishing potentially a Briardale Foundation policy book, which would include goals and objectives, foundation leadership, fundraising, and ethics, provide training to stakeholders on the laws and policies regarding fundraising, consulting with the superintendent and board of education members about Mr. Burley and his role as the principal of the Briardale Foundation, and then request legal guidance on next steps in regards to the money raised. So, things that I would probably ask in this guidance would: is there a fine for not having a charitable license raffle? If so, can we pay the fine and the fees for the license and still use the money? If we are not allowed to keep the money raised, what will be the plan of action to fund the supplemental programs? In this situation, I'm assuming that it would involve budget cuts. Those kind of conversations would probably be had. So, intermediate, consider options. I feel at since the kind of arrest of Mr. Barely, I feel like as the principal, they most likely would want to oversee the Briardale Foundation until further notice. So now let's evaluate the options. So taking no action, the pros of that, I do not see any pros of doing nothing at this point. The cons would be the future fundraising events may break law and policy again, and legal action most likely would be taken against the school. So the pros of the comprehensive action, the Briardale community will be made aware of the facts of the situation and plan to rectify the situation. Policy and procedures will be reviewed and established to prevent further future dilemmas. An equitable resourcing plan can be established to better promote the current and future success and well-being of each student and adult. And the Briardale Foundation and staff members will be trained on fundraising law and policy. The cons of this, though, the school district may have to use already allocated funds to pay for legal counsel fines and fees. Unfortunately, this may lead to budget cuts of some sort. So, in my opinion, the best plan to go along with would be the comprehensive plan. So, why do I think this is the best decision? I think that this decision has the greatest positive impact on all stakeholders involved. Within this plan, all members who have an important stake in the outcome receive the proper training, information, and attention needed to rectify the situation. How can your decision be implemented with the greatest care and attention? So, prior to carrying out the plan, guidance and approval should be sought from the superintendent and potentially legal counsel. This plan will take time and resources to carry through. However, at the end of the day, the staff and students will benefit from the efforts for years to come. I think this plan is better than just a band aid fix. I think this kind of plan and uh, the comprehensive plan, I think it just has in thinking long term, it's going to have the most positive impact on the staff and students. So, have all stakeholders been consulted? As already mentioned, the superintendent and legal counsel should be consulted, along with the Board of Education, I should include. And have I identified creative options? I believe so. So let's talk a little bit more about this plan and what it would look like actually being implemented. So as I said before, I would communicate with the department, communications department, to issue an apology. For this, I would just make sure that we focus on the facts and the plan of actions to rectify the situation. And then the whole goal of the apology would to reestablish trust and leadership and my commitment to doing what is best for students based on what I know of the situation so far, I always believe that the members who are selected as leaders have the best interests of the staff and students in their mind. So I believe that Mr. Santos had good intentions. So the apology most likely will be genuine, heartfelt, and um, communicate that at the end of the day, we were just trying to do what was best for students, raising enough money to provide new innovative ways for the students to receive supplemental learning. So that would be kind of the plan of action that I would take for the communication. Audit the current established protocol. So in my opinion, one out of the six elementary schools, I think reaching out to the other site principals and seeing if they have any protocols for their foundations, reaching out to district leadership and seeing what their guidance would be to prevent these kind of situations from happening again. As I already mentioned, I think establishing a foundation policy book would be a great next step as well. The foundation policy book can include the goals and objectives of the members. It also could talk about the leadership. I think maybe establishing not just a president, but maybe like a leadership team where on the team could be members from the obviously parent community, but also including maybe staff members. I think the building principal should also be on the foundation or the board, just so they could have input and oversee and supervise kind of those conversations. Also, I think in the policy book should be fundraising and ethics because there could have been an ethical kind of dilemma there with Mr. I believe it was Morley and Mr. Barely, the competition. And just at the end of the day, I don't think that's something that really should be highlighted and focused on if you were serving on as president because at the end of the day that would be his own personal kind of wants and needs over the students. So and then also obviously providing the training to all stakeholders about the laws and policies regarding fundraising. So obviously the members of the Briardale Foundation and Briardale Elementary, and then consulting with the superintendent and board of education members about Mr. Barely and his role as president of the foundation. So I think this is important because it is kind of I don't know what the kind of plan of action would be for that. So my questions would be: does this action warrant removal from him serving as board president? The foundation board members also supported this event. Are there repercussions for them? And then are there procedures that state approval from principal and board of education members that were skipped? Also requesting legal guidance on the next steps in regard to the money raised. Is there a fine? And can we pay the fine? And then what do we do with the money that was raised? That would be a big conversation there, but I think I just need more information to know what might happen. So, what hopefully will happen though is a more effective, equitable, and just Briardale Foundation is established. That's purpose is to serve the Briardale Elementary School. The foundation has a policy book, clear understanding of the chain of command, and a greater sense of purpose in their doings. The school thrives after the setback and provides innovative supplemental programs for all students of the Briardale Elementary School. Who needs to know? The Board of Education members, superintendent, and Briardale community. Can this be dealt with on my own? No. And what other possible outcomes might there be? If this plan of actions ends up not working, I would ask guidance from the superintendent on what my next step should be. In my opinion, those types of things would be, can we budget money from other funds to provide these supplemental learning programs for the students? Going about those would kind of be my next plan of action or train of thoughts, because at the end of the day, I want the students to not suffer. So, what are we going to need to do to make sure they don't? So, in conclusion, this case study was a great opportunity to demonstrate my complete capacity on handling a budgeting debacle. Overall, my understanding of data informed and equitable resourcing has increased tremendously. My attention to policy, laws, and regulations now will forever make me a reliable leader. This attention will help prevent or lessen the likelihood of a debacle taking place. I know my responsibility to supervise and manage the school budget as a building principal is critical to the success and well being of all students. I must have strong internal controls to prevent this loss and theft of district money. Overall, it was a great course, and I'm a better educator because of it. And lastly, here are my resources.